Okay, we have the green light, so I'm going to call this meeting of the Lake Mills City Council to order for June 18th, 2024. Misty, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Curler?
Here.
Mr. Waters?
Here.
Ms. Schmager?
Here.
Mr. Fields?
Here.
Ms. Quidno? Thank you.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Michelle.
Thank you, and I'll note that Michelle is just coming into the room getting set up, so she's been able to join us. And it's a very warm Tuesday here in Lake Mills, both outdoors and in this meeting room. So if we seem a little sluggish and sweaty, that's why. But thank you, everyone in the audience, for bearing with us. So we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is Councilmember Board Reports and Acceptance of Meeting Minutes. We have a report from the Parks Board regarding the Mill Pond. We have City Council meeting minutes from June 4th, Public Works Board from May 14th, Housing Authority from April 23rd, and 2 Parks Board meeting minutes from February 21st and April 17th. Are there any comments or corrections to any of these minutes? Greg.
I have a couple comments on the Parks Board report to City Council regarding Mill Pond. I was wondering in the final report if we could get information that included environmental effects. It seems like they listed things like minimal environmental effects, things like that, but it'd be nice to understand what those environmental effects would be.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Or Mary, I didn't know if you wanted to share anything. This is a progress report, I know, from the Parks Board, so it's not their final recommendations.
Yes, this is a progress report, so we still have work to do. But I haven't noted that we will, environmental is a part of the discussion. Looking back, we know we have DNR and been working with the Jefferson County Land and Water Conservation, and so we will make sure we have that buttoned up.
Okay. And also, I wanted to call out in the Public Works Board meeting minutes from May 14th, there was a note to council that the bicycle route to downtown, basically the Public Works wanted to let the City Council know that there was no clear path forward at this point. They're willing to look at it in the future, but they just wanted to give us an update that at this point there's no clear path forward in that regard.
Thank you for that. I know the Public Works Board and staff have been working on alternatives for a number of months and haven't found anything very viable.
Right.
Any other comments or corrections? I'll simply note I'm a member of the Housing Authority Board, and the Housing Authority is they submit their minutes to the city manager appoints the members of the authority, but they are an independent quasi-judicial body, and their executive director recently retired, Steve Pierce, after 10 years managing the Rock Lake Manor, and we've hired a new executive director, Liz Waisenge, so hopefully folks will get a chance to meet her and interact with her around town. Okay, hearing no corrections, I will accept these minutes into our public record. So next agenda item is our monthly report from the Joint Rock Lake Committee, and we have Wendy Davies here.
Hi, good evening. Well, as you know, we welcomed a new city representative, Lauren. She's a go-getter. We really like her. And she is our new secretary. We had election of officers, so she's our secretary and will be taking our minutes. I will remain chairperson, and Daniel Smith will be vice chair. And Pat will be our, I guess, at-large person. Our priority currently is still providing educational articles for the Lake Mills Leader. We will put After the articles are published in the Leader, then we're going to publish them on the community Facebook page, because we think they're pretty important. So the latest one that we sent in for publication was about bait fish. And it was called "You Can Tune a Piano, but You Cannot Tune a Fish." So it was pretty cute. But it's all very factual, so we take all our information right from the DNR and make sure that it's vetted properly. And our newest article is about the dam management article, which I think Eric had a lot to input with that, and hopefully we'll get that published next. Then we have a couple that kind of missed the mark because they were about cold water, so we're going to wait and put them in the fall when the water gets cold again, if it gets cold again. We continue, our committee continues to stay informed of the Lake Management District investigative team. They're currently downstairs with a team of residents getting information. We will participate with the RLIA on wake enhanced technology on Rock Lake to figure out, what does it mean, what doesn't it mean, what kind of education do we have to provide for people to understand, do we want to make recommendations for or against. We'll also participate with the RLIA on the Sandy Beach Development Project, particularly the restaurant design. And again, what does it mean to everybody, what does it mean to the city or to all the residents. The Joint Rock Lake Committee has a big responsibility now. We will be replacing all the missing and damaged clean boats and clean waters tools on the town launches, which has kind of been neglected in the past, and so we're going to fix that. We've ordered the parts that we need, and there's just a few that are really missing. So we'll get that taken care of as soon as those couple of tools come in that we need. And we're starting a spreadsheet to track the progress of projects that we have done, and we're going back to 2 years ago and trying to get a spreadsheet of here's the projects, here was the status, they were approved, not approved, tabled, still thinking about it, so that we can, as new people come on, they'll be able to read this and not have to read every single set of minutes and kind of find out where we've been. And do you have any questions?
Are there any questions for Wendy?
I have a question. Can you please repeat what is being repaired? You mentioned tools.
The clean boats, clean waters tools, when the people put their boats in and out, those little nice hanging tools. So we've been assigned to take care of those for the town boat launches, which is a good thing, because a lot of us live real close to them, and we'll just take our turns. And most of them are there. There's just a few pieces that are missing, and we've ordered those, so that'll be taken care of promptly.
Thank you. As soon as you described it, I knew what you were talking about, but I missed it when you were this time around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, and the next agenda item, going along on the theme of our different boards and committees, is we have a presentation from our ad hoc committee on urban forest management. So I think Jeanette Heitman, the chair, is going to give us a brief presentation. With our agenda, we have the original resolution that the council passed with the 3 assignments that we had for this committee, and then we have the policy recommendation. So welcome, Jeanette.
Thank you. So I'm Jeanette Heitman. I live at 510 College Street, and I'm the chair of the ad hoc committee on urban forestry. The first charge given our advisory committee was to develop a tree protection plan for use during road reconstructions and infrastructure projects throughout the city. Our committee has completed that work and voted to submit the final draft of that proposal to the council this evening. On behalf of our committee, I would like to thank the council for their authorization of this advisory committee and your commitment to our urban forest. Next slide, please. I would like to share a sincere thank you to all our committee members who worked on this proposal: Matt Blessing, Brandy Duro, Rick Santovic, and Elaine Thousand. Our committee would like to thank Drake Daly, our city manager, Eric Schreiner, our city forester, and Dan Drescher, our city attorney, for their resources, their time, and their consistent commitment to this collaborative effort. Next slides, please. Many citizens lobbied for the formation of this committee because trees do enhance the quality of our lives here in Lake Mills. Next slide, please. Here are just a few ways that trees impact our lives. Trees reduce cost of energy up to 25%. They absorb traffic noises by an estimated 40%. Neighborhoods with trees are 7 to 9 degrees cooler. Green spaces and shade encourage physical activity and improve mental health. And homes with trees on their property have higher property values. Next slide, please. The proposed tree proposal policy that we submitted was developed through feedback from city residents as well as valuable information from resources across our state. Some of those resources included tree protection policies from 7 Wisconsin communities, feedback from several city staff from Fitchburg who just received an award for their tree protection policy. That included the mayor, their city forester, and the chairperson of their tree advisory committee. The Arbor Day Foundation, countless Lake Mills city residents and homeowners, Mike Heitman, professional city engineer who provided a presentation to our committee, and the International Society of Arboriculture Best Practices Manual. Next slide, please. Using the information from those resources, we developed the plan around the 6 main stages of construction as outlined in the International Society of Arboriculture's Manual on Best Practices of Managing Trees During Site Development and Construction. The 6 stages are planning, design, pre-construction, construction, landscaping, and post-construction. Next slide, please. Some important takeaways from our tree proposal plan are the tree protection policy is a necessary part of a thriving urban forest. The city forester and arborists must be involved in all stages of the construction process. Successful implementation requires communication and buy-in across all city departments. Tree protections must be present in construction plans as a bid item within specifications and also listed as details in construction plans. This assures that tree protections are included in the contractor's bids to the city and also that they're adhered to during construction projects. The tree protection policy should be discussed at all pre-construction meetings, and highlights and necessary elements should be discussed at weekly meetings. Monitoring throughout the process ensures compliance. Next slide, please. Lake Mills is also a designated tree city. This recognition demonstrates that Lake Mills has already taken numerous steps towards growing and maintaining our urban forest. Tree city designation is given when a community has a forestry or tree board department, they have a tree ordinance, they spend $2 per capita on urban forestry, and they celebrate Arbor Day. This work, along with our proposed tree protection policy, will help our community further preserve and protect the many mature trees that already exist in our beautiful community. Next slide, please. Our committee's belief is that each tree within our urban forest is a step towards stronger, healthier communities throughout the country and around the world. Our community members, as well as many concerned city residents, understand the value and the importance of existing mature canopy trees within Lake Mills. Your approval of the proposed tree protection policy would be a significant step towards protecting and preserving those trees for all future generations. Thank you again for your support. Our advisory committee looks forward to our continued work on the remaining charges within our ad hoc resolution.
Thank you very much, Jeanette.
Yeah.
I appreciate the presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Jeanette this evening? Mary?
I'm curious to know if the committee tested the policy with construction firms, just to get the reaction around whether it would cause them angst, whether they would be in support and be able to navigate with the changes that are being proposed. I'm just curious if you tested it at all.
No, we did not. Mike Heitman is a civil engineer that has worked in the field for over 30 years in many different communities, including Madison, Racine, and others that have very strong tree protection plans. So he did provide support on the viability of the many things that we have included in the plan. I did get feedback from several other engineers that work within the construction field. They also said that things were very doable, that it might be a little uncomfortable or take extra time initially to implement some of the things in the plan, but that once they're done, they become the standard practice. Those other individuals chose to not be named.
Any other questions? Greg?
Ms. Heitman, on the, can you comment on the tree protection zones? It sounds like that's something that happens during construction.
Mm-hmm. A very important part of the whole plan, Greg, is the tree protection zone. So they could be as expensive and I don't know, ornate as having actual fencing put up, but as we discussed in our committee, that the foresters and arborists would make that decision, but generally just using fencing, the orange fencing with stakes, is a way that we protect the tree and its roots during construction. So the city forester and arborist, depending on the tree, the age of the tree, the type of tree, would be mapping out how large that tree protection zone would need to be. And then no construction materials, no vehicles, nothing can occur underneath that tree canopy and within that tree protection zone. There would be an opening in the tree protection zone to allow the forester, arborist, whoever needs to enter there to do any type of work, but they would be the main people kind of monitoring those tree protection zones. We did note in our plan that it's very important that they stay up all the way until that landscaping phase goes into effect. When those tree protection zones are not in place, we see that there is damage to the roots of trees through compression of the soil, gouging of trees. So it's a very important part of the plan.
And I also wanted to comment, thank you for your work and the work of the committee to put together this document. It was quite the document. I only had a chance to go through a first reading, but for me to come up with actionable items, I need to review it further and review that. But it's a very impressive document. Thank you for everyone's work.
Yeah, it was a lot of material to sort through. We wanted to make sure that we got feedback, like I said, from a lot of different communities to see what they were doing and how they were implementing their plans. We did try to be as brief as possible, but felt that as a document, we needed to have those things mentioned in there. There is an addendum that is attached to that document that has the wording that would be what would be in place for construction, businesses that would be implementing the plan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jeanette, I've got a question for you just about the process that your committee followed, and I had the chance to sit in on a couple of meetings, and I really appreciate a lot of material, I think, that you all read through. I understand that you looked at ordinances from several other communities, and you particularly mentioned Fitchburg. tonight. So how did you choose among those? And you said Fitchburg got an award, so is this recommendation kind of similar to what Fitchburg did, or is it similar to some other community that we would be familiar with?
All of them varied a great deal. Some were very focused on just specific parts of tree protection, and others were much more overarching. There was one plan, and I don't know, Drake, if you can remember which one, but it really spoke to just a specific study that was done within their community. Yeah. I can't remember which one it was, but what we did was we read through all of them and really highlighted the things that really stuck out to us. Eric Schreiner shared with us that manual from the Arboriculture Society, which really provided that framework of how we could fit in those different elements that we felt were really critical from the different tree protection plans. We did see a lot of overlap, like the tree protection zones, things like that, that came up in many of the plans.
Thank you. And I think one of the things I noted, and I also kind of had a chance to read through it a couple times, but it's a lot of information to digest, so I'm sure I'm going to want to read it again. Some of the definitions, we have some of those already in our current ordinance, so I think there will be opportunities to put this together. One term I didn't see defined, and I was just very curious, this is in the specification section in the appendix. There's something that says at the city's discretion install a type 2 barricade. What is that? Do you recall what that is?
No, I do not.
Randy, our type 2 barricade, it's a movable, I'm trying to think.
Is it sort of a type of fence?
It's standard language, a type of barricade that you would use to blockade an area. It has a specific.
Area that the contractor, it's a term the contractor would be familiar with. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Then I won't worry about it, but I wasn't sure if that was something unique to tree protection or kind of more typical for a construction site.
No, it's road reconstruction, things of that nature, they'll know.
Oh, Dwayne's holding up some pictures of what those look like. Okay, so blocking off a
Thank you.
street or an area. Okay. Great, thank you so much. Any other questions for Jeanette this evening? Okay, so we're not scheduled to take any action tonight, so I'm sure we'll be revisiting this on a future agenda. And I do want to again express thanks on behalf of the whole council for you and your committee. I know this was a lot of work to get to this point, and we do have 2 other deliverables we're looking for from you by the end of the year, but you might want to take a little vacation maybe for a little while after this one.
We're gonna hold off till the end of July to meet again, so
Okay,
thank you again.
Thank you very much for being here. Okay, I do just want to comment, it's very warm in here, and so if the agenda item that you're here for is not until later, feel free to go out in the hallway where it's a little bit cooler. The council and staff will be staying put and slogging through. So, okay, our next agenda item is correspondence. Steve, I'll start with you.
All right, a couple emails on the Sloan-Awake public meeting for the Lake Mills Management District was tonight. I got email on that. I also did attend that. Received the letter on the community garden, and also there was one that came through this afternoon on fencing.
Great, thank you. Mary?
I had some of the similar ones, the community garden, fencing, and the Lake Mills Management District. I also received emails on the dam gate operation and the Sandy Beach proposal and plans for the future.
Greg?
I won't repeat, but I did have a question on the tree lawn on West Lake Street, and I'll be following up with the resident on that as well.
Okay. Michelle?
I had the same phone call.
Did you follow up with them
I
already?
did. I haven't followed up with the resident, but I took care of it with city staff, and it's been being rectified. So I'm glad that you mentioned it so that we didn't come across like we're
Double team.
double teaming. Nothing else really was added to what has already been said. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and I'll just add, I think I received correspondence similar to almost everyone else. I think we all received something from Drake regarding that congressionally directed funding that I'm sure you'll talk about in a moment. And then I've had a number of conversations with people interested in the Plan Commission vacancy. So that is my correspondence. So our next agenda item is questions and public comment. So now is the time where the public is encouraged to address the council regarding items on the agenda. Public comments can also be made on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meetings law discourages actions by the council on items that are not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet at the podium. If there's anyone online that wishes to make public comment, you can type your name and address in the chat feature, and the clerk will see that you would like to speak. So is there anyone here in the room that would like to make public comment? Brandy.
Yes, hello. I had registered earlier and signed my name. So
Okay, so
I'm
can
Brandy
you just give us,
Roskowski-Duro, 204 Westlake Park Place, Lake Mills. I'm here to address the council about Sandy Beach and moving forward with the development plans that are in place. And I'm very pleased that you are kind of taking a step back and reanalyzing everything that's in the plans that had been planned back in 2019. My biggest concern has to do with that we have 14 acres of public use for beaches and parking, and then there's 13 and a half acres for the trailer park. And I know that's on the agenda for a long-term keeping that in place. My question to the council is to really reconsider the necessity of it, what the history of that is. I can understand back in the 50s and through the previous decades, maybe it was something that was more acceptable, but today with our population growing and the need for more space for accessible use for more residents in the city and those visiting the city, I find it very questionable to have space which would be for 85 trailers that would just have unlimited time to keep those leases, unless there'd be something in place like every 3 years that people would have to possibly give up their space, something like that to make it more equitable. So at this point, I do hope that you are looking at that as well. I think those 13 and a half acres could be used much more wisely and bring in revenue with different plans in place. And to just say that it brings in a lot of money to the city to have those trailers there, I think is kind of a cop-out, because I think there are many more solutions than allowing just that exclusive use for that few amount of people. Thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment here in the room?
Can I make the comment during the fencing issue, or do you want to have that now?
All the comments for any item on the agenda are now. So if you want to speak on anything that's on the agenda tonight, now's your chance.
So bundling everything right at the beginning of the meeting?
Yep, that's our sort of our standard agenda.
Okay. So if people want to come and discuss the fencing issue when that's on the agenda, they will not have a chance to do that?
When we get to that agenda item, the council will be discussing it, but we won't be taking public comment
But then
at
you
that
won't
time.
take public comment after that? After this bundling of comment
Tonight is the
right now?
second,
It's
tonight
kind
is
of a
the
trunk.
second reading on the
I'm just
fence.
thinking it's a real truncated way to have a meeting. It's sort of a perfunctory sort of suggestion that, okay, we'll take care of this, get this out of the way, and then we'll get down to our real work. You feel like kind of a second-class citizen, actually, with that sort of procedural trick. is
Well-
basically what it is. It's a procedure, of course. It's a parliamentary procedures, and those you have designed it so that basically you take care of this, and then you can go on with your business. But I hope that doesn't take up my 3 minutes. I just wanted to ask if I could have my comment during the discussion about the fencing, which is down further in the agenda. But I'll do it right now, and hopefully it's remembered, the main points a half an hour, 20 minutes later. But if that's the way you guys want to do it, let's carry on, I guess. I would like to see us really slow down on changing the rules on fencing, because
Sir, can you give us your name and address to begin?
Jacob Arndt,
Excuse me?
520, Jacob Arndt, 527 Mulberry, and I have 5 historic properties in town here, so I kind of have a stake in this fencing issue. And what I'm feeling the drift on the fencing is that it's going into more of a free-for-all construction thing. And I'd just like to say, it may seem a minor thing, fencing, but everybody needs art. Doesn't matter what your politics are. Everybody needs art. And our architecture is part of our art, especially in Lake Mills. We're not competing with Marshall, and we're not competing with Sun Prairie. We have a class of architectural art that needs monitoring and taken care of. And this is a mistake to just go ahead, slow down on your fencing laissez-faire. We need to so architecture is art. We have beautiful architecture here, housing stock in architecture here. I know, I'm an architectural stonemason, 40 years in business. I know what architectural art is, and landscaping art is part of the architecture. And that is very important, because a little bit of landscaping goes a long way to make it beautiful or make it ugly. So that point I want to make that isn't forgotten, and that landscape and that fences are part of that look. And a 6-foot-high fence with no relief that's dug into the ground with no, wildlife access in the lawn, out the lawn, and looking at boxed-in areas is psychologically a health and safety ordinance issue. Open space, parks, and the rest of it are just a responsible way of looking at designing and managing our assets here in architectural and landscape. And another thing about this is that giving away easy do-it-yourself or materials that are cheap fencing takes away from our artisans and our businesses. Ornamental iron, wood, stone, whatever, cast iron, whatever. If we have a more sophisticated look here, we're going to have higher property values, and we're going to be able to attract the kind of society, the kind of people, and the kind of repose that we want here, rather than this free-for-all thing with the aesthetics of fencing. It may seem small,
Thank
but I
you,
think
Mr.
we're going
Arndt.
in
Thank you,
a-
Mr. Arndt. I'm going to ask you to wrap it up now, because I did give you
Okay,
3 minutes in
okay.
addition to our conversation about procedures.
All right, okay. So let me wrap it up by saying, let's just slow down on this. The existing ordinance was fine, and in fact, if we get like an ad hoc committee to start like a more mature city we're becoming, to start actually having a professional oversight, I think would be a good way to move forward on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to make public comment this evening? Is there anyone online who would like to provide public comment? Okay.
Ms. Fuller, there are a few online that have registered.
Okay,
Katie Whipperfirth and Carly Butzine. Oh, I'm sorry, Carly Butzine just wanted to make a comment, but Katie Whipperfirth should be available.
okay. So Katie Whipperfirth, are you online, Katie?
I am.
Sure, why don't you
Katie
go ahead.
Whipperfirth, 365 Rosewood Ave. I'm sure you're all familiar with my fence. Just to kind of piggyback off of the individual that just spoke, the fencing code has been a free-for-all based on some of the open records requests that I've made, and a precedent has been set, and that's why I want to speak on that today. Late last summer, my husband and I modified the 4-foot pre-existing fence that we had, and we changed it to a 6-foot fence. We did this to prevent injury to our family and our pets and reduce any nuisances. Shortly after, we received a letter from the building inspector, which started out with the following: responding to a complaint filed with the office of the building inspector. Throughout this process, we have been told that the city does not keep any complaints and would not disclose anything further to me. The last council meeting, it was mentioned that there isn't enough manpower to enforce the code, and codes are enforced when visible to the inspector, city employee, or filed by a complaint. I asked the city council this: how do you ensure an individual isn't being discriminated against or harassed when the reason of your letter that you send is based for enforcement is based on the complaint filed with the inspector? However, no complaint can be produced. How do you ensure that your inspector and zoning employees are acting ethically when the code is enforced at random, or again, when somebody files a complaint? There are several violations currently in Brookstone alone, which are being ignored. And I and my husband refuse to be those neighbors, nor should the city put us in that situation. I'm sure that the city employees which live in Brookstone have seen these violations, yet they are not enforced, based again on the open record requests for any violations that currently exist in Brookstone. For example, there's currently a corner lot that has a 4.5-foot pool that's 6 inches from the sidewalk. There's no fence around it. It's been there for over a month, and that's okay, but I can't have a privacy fence. And if I do, I'm going to have fines imposed on my property. At the last city council meeting, Mr. Daly admitted to knowing about 4-foot fences, or fences, that exceeded 4 feet in height in the front and side yards without the approval of a conditional use. Our property was subject to a conditional use. It was also stated that a significant number of vinyl fences have been approved over the last 10 years. And I quote, "Some have been permitted, others likely not," unquote. So, he says that it's a free-for-all. It does kind of feel like that when you know that these fences exist. You've either approved them or they stand and they're not approved. Why is this happening? So we asked the city council, where are these individuals that did not pull a permit or apply for a conditional use? Why did they not get a letter? Why are we being held to a different standard and subject to fines when these properties are not? We do not feel that we have been treated in the same manner as other residents in the city. And if the code passes as it's currently presented, we will have, and we get any letters from the city that's going to enforce fines on our property, we will have no choice but to seek legal counsel and put fine or file complaints against licensure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Whipperfirth, sorry. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment tonight? Ms. Butzine, did you want to speak?
Ms. Butzine informed me she does not wish to speak, but I do have Sue Keys-Johnson, who has indicated that she will be speaking.
Okay, great. Ms. Keys-Johnson, please go ahead. Okay, we can see you on the screen, but I don't think we can hear you.
I apologize.
There we go.
I was having technical difficulty.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Sue Keys-Johnson, 126 Fargo Street. I agree with what Katie was saying. I agree with what Jacob was saying. I think that the visual effects and the the visual effects of the vinyl fencing specifically does not go along with the historical beauty of our city. I feel it's very disruptive. I also don't agree with some of the decision making that has randomly been made with regard to approving a fence, approving a vinyl fence, that based on the precedent that these fencing codes were going to be changed, that it was then allowed ahead of time because it wasn't looked at as fair to say no to the vinyl fencing when looking ahead, most likely it was going to be approved. I feel that that should have been, if you like the vinyl fencing, then you can wait till it's approved as opposed to doing that ahead of time. And it seems like there's been a lot of decisions that have been made. Why have some people been allowed to have vinyl fencing when it hasn't been an approved fencing material since 2016? So I don't think that it should fall on one person to be making these decisions about how this is going to affect the aesthetics of our committee, or of our city, excuse me. And I feel that there should be some type of committee with professional background that can help to determine that and to help to make these decisions, and that it not be just the zoning administrator, building inspector saying yay or nay to, this issue. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to provide public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will close our question and public comment period for this evening. Thank you, everyone. So now we're moving on to agenda item 9, which is city manager's report, and we have all of our usual financial reports and fire department and police department and ambulance reports. Drake, is there anything else that you want to add or highlight?
The only thing I would add is we did hear back from Senator Baldwin's office that the 2 applications we made for congressionally directed funding are not moving forward in the appropriations process. So that is the north side, phase 1 of the North Side Development Plan, which was the extension of certain infrastructure beyond the interstate, and the other was assistance for the construction of an expansion of the public library facility. So we were not successful this time. We'll continue pursuing other avenues of funding, as we always do for other projects, but that's the update I have for you. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for the city manager? Okay, thank you. Hearing none, we will move on to agenda item 10, which is council business. If there are no objections, I would like to move up items C and D and do those first. That's the recognition of service for K-9 Truman and the authorization to sell K-9 Truman. Any objections from council members? Okay, so let's go first to resolution 24-42, the recognition of service. Misty, could you read that title for us, please, when you're ready?
City Council Resolution 24-42, in appreciation of public service to the City of Lake Mills from K-9 Truman.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval of this resolution?
I'll move to approve. I'll move to approve resolution 24-42, the appreciation for public service for K-9 Truman.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Fields and a second by Mr. Waters. And we have K-9 Truman here tonight. So we would like to have him come forward with Lieutenant Cedarwall. And I've asked Steve Fields to read the recognition out loud. Steve, I think, is the only council member who was here when we first started the K-9 program. So we'd like to have this recognition tonight. Welcome, Officer Truman and Officer Cedarwall.
All right, resolution 24-42, in appreciation of public service to the City of Lake Mills from K-9 Truman. Whereas in 2019, Truman became the first canine to serve in the police department of the city of Lake Mills. And whereas during his career with the Lake Mills Police Department, Truman served as a dual-purpose canine. And whereas as a patrol canine, Truman performed the task of officer protection, suspect apprehension, area or building clearance, and tracking. And whereas as a detection canine, Truman was used to detect the presence of drugs, resulting in countless drug seizures and arrests. And whereas Canine Truman served to bring the community and the Lake Mills Police Department together through his interactions with citizens at community events and demonstrations. And whereas the service Canine Truman provided the Lake Mills Police Department and the city of Lake Mills has provided a lasting and meaningful contribution to the city of Lake Mills. And whereas the City Council and the City of Lake Mills desire to recognize and honor Canine Truman for his career and loyal service to the Lake Mills Police Department, the City of Lake Mills, and its citizens. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Lake Mills does hereby recognize and dedicate public service and career of Canine Truman and extends best wishes for his enjoyable and relaxing retirement from the Lake Mills Police Department. Resolved this 18th day of June.
And can we hold on applause, have a roll call vote on this resolution, please?
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Fuller?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, can we have a round of applause for Now, normally we would shake the hand of an employee who's departing, but perhaps Lieutenant Cedarwell, if you want to just come up front and maybe Chief Schroeder can get a picture with the council and Canine Officer Truman.
Do you want to stand out front?
Do you want me to come out with you, or we can all stand up front? Yeah. Just a chance to move around a little bit. Not with his usual hand. No. So. Thanks, Truman.
Good luck to you as well.
No, we're not letting Lieutenant Cedarwell. Okay, thank you. And so our next agenda item, which is related, is Resolution 24-43. Misty, would you read that title, please?
City Council Resolution 24-43, authorization to sell Canine Truman.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 24-43, authorization to sell Canine Truman.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Schmager, seconded by Mr. Fields. Staff or Chief, would you like to tell us about this?
Good evening. So just a quick background on why we're here today. Canine Truman is about 7 years old. Canines generally have a working life of to age 7 to 10 years old. Officer Hanley, who was Canine Truman's current handler, took a position with an agency in the state of Montana, which left us without a handler. Officer Hanley was Truman's second handler after Officer Adams, and his initial handler had left to go to an agency in Florida. So we had to make the decision whether Truman keeps working and we find another handler, try to identify another handler and train that handler with Truman, or whether we decide to end his service. It's obviously a difficult situation. I don't think it's fair to Truman to assign a third handler to him. We don't know how long he would have left to work, and it's a significant investment both in finances and time to train another handler. So I made the decision to essentially end his service as a police canine. With that in mind, the two options in my mind were either his initial handler, TJ Adams, or his current handler, Brandon Hanley, if they were interested in homing Truman. Because he wasn't retiring due to age or a need to end his service, we decided to offer to sell Truman to either of them. Officer Adams reached out to us actually before we contacted him and made an offer to purchase Truman. Officer Hanley was offered the opportunity to match that and decided not to. So we're recommending that the council approve the sale of Truman to Terry Adams, who was his first handler, and he was with him for almost 3 years as his handler. And we also make the recommendation or request that any funds or proceeds from the sale of Truman be designated to a canine fund to go towards our next canine, because we plan on continuing our program.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions or discussion for Chief Schrader? Greg?
As I look at the resolution, and I wonder if there should be a statement in there about the retirement of, that he or she, the Truman is retiring from service. Should that be part of the resolution? It seems like that should be built in there somewhere.
So we are not considering, we're not considering it a formal retirement. Under the terms of the canine agreement, a formal retirement provides certain rights to the handler to take ownership of the canine. But because the canine Truman is leaving service prior to the end of his working life, that clause does not apply. And so it's not considered, under the terms of that agreement, it's not considered a retirement of Officer Truman.
So under this agreement, he could be returned to service then?
Not for the city of Lake Mills. The agreement does not contemplate a future use for the dog under new private ownership.
And I could add, in conversation with Terry Adams, there is no intention for him to put Truman into service. He is purchasing him as a pet because of the connection that they had due to their almost 3 years together.
Any other questions or comments?
I also wanted to speak real quick on the success of the canine program, and be nice to see that come back in the future. So it's kind of sad to see Truman leave, but at the same time, I understand the circumstances and appreciate the way that we're going about moving forward with this situation. So thank you for the solution, and hopefully everything will go great with Truman's future as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to comment that Truman has been a beloved officer in our community. Years that he's been here, named after a beloved fallen firefighter from our community. And I believe that the community is going to have a chance to say goodbye to Truman next week. Is that right? Can you just share that for everyone?
Yes, next Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. is our National Night Out event that we host every year. It'll be at Real Hope Community Church. Public is welcome to come, police from throughout the county, firefighters from our fire department. A lot of our public servants will be there. It's an opportunity to get to know the public, and we will have recognition for Canine Truman there, and a final opportunity for the public to see Truman and say goodbye to him.
Thank you. So I encourage everyone in the community, families, kids, everyone who has been supportive of this program to take that opportunity to say goodbye. Any other comments? Okay, if not, can we have a roll call vote on Resolution 24-43, please?
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Priller?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Truman. Okay, so let's return now to letter A, which is a consent agenda. And so we've been doing these a bit lately, so we would be approving all the items that are listed. I'm going to ask that we remove the first item, the Class A fermented malt beverage and Class A liquor license application for Walgreens, on the advice of our clerk that has not been properly noticed. So we would be doing a consent agenda on items 2 and 3 for the Dollar Store and the Lake Mills Fish Hatchery. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda for the 2 items?
Motion to approve consent agenda for item 2 and 3.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Priller?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, now the next agenda item is discussion and action on the Sandy Beach Restaurant preliminary design.
Can I call for a 5-minute recess?
Absolutely. Motion for recess? Anyone second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. All in favor, raise your hands. Okay, 5-minute recess to cool off.
Thank you.
They just leave these doors open so that out there in the antechamber, whatever you call it.
That's what I'm saying, so if we do anything, I just ordered this last week. Because I don't know. It just doesn't.
You sound like you're a 90-year-old crack, 90-year-old crack.
So they people like it.
Early 50s. What's your full name? Susan?
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order after a brief recess. And we were just at the beginning of, let's see, where are we? Letter B, a discussion action on the Sandy Beach Restaurant preliminary design. So I'll turn it over to Drake Daly.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our architect, Jeremy, to come to the podium, and he's going to give you the highlights of the design to date, and then after he's done, I will run us through some budget numbers.
Great, thank you, welcome.
Hi, welcome. I'm here. I can't
Sorry
top
it's so
the-
warm.
We're all very warm. I was joking out there. I'm going to Arizona in a few weeks, so this is good preparation.
Prep, yeah, there you go.
And I can't top the dog. That was impressive. So I guess I'd like to start out by saying we've been working diligently with Drake and Dan and Eric to, I guess, first and foremost, listen and not just on the staff side, but also to the community. There's been a lot of comments that have come in already, and I believe we've been as respectful as we possibly can to respond to those comments in our design. I'll hopefully touch on some of those things as I walk through. I guess first and foremost, I'll start out with the location of the building and the site placement. So in previous studies, as well as in comments, there's been a lot of requests for respecting the lake and the quality of the water and the setbacks from there. And so we placed the building, which made sense for many reasons beyond just the items I outlined. But we placed the building near where the sandbar previously was located. And actually, if you have the site plan in front of you, we did roughly locate where the previous restaurant was. We did churn the building a little bit in that location to better, to be more perpendicular to the beachfront. And so the other thing that you'll find with that is the current parking lot and arrangement out there at the site worked very well for that building placement, obviously. So, but it also works well for a future boardwalk. It works well for general connection to the beach. So there was many reasons why the building got sited and located in the spot that we've proposed. The building itself is 135 feet.
If I may, I just apologies for interrupting. We don't have this up on the screen, but the council does have attached to the agenda. We have a design and some other information, so that's what you're referring to.
Yes,
Just wanted
yes.
to let the audience know. Thanks.
At this time, the building's 135 feet from the ordinary high water line, and that is slightly back from where the previous building was located. However, once we add a deck and porch, those elements are exterior to the building. That does set that at about 120 feet. Some of those elements will be impervious versus hard surface and such. So I think that you'll find that that the siting is in a strong position. So moving on from that, one of the things that we wanted to do with the design itself was to think about the community connections and how the building would interact with not only beach and beach attire and things that go on in the summer, but also maybe in the fall or middle of winter. Can this be a building that's used all year round and be inviting to maybe a little bit more of a finer dining experience in those times and a little bit more of a casual dining experience when you're in your beach attire? And so we presented multiple design directions, and collectively we settled on the idea of a beach boardwalk. So kind of a upscale beach boardwalk feel that maybe you'd see in Naples, Florida, or something along those lines, but also mixed a little bit with what's Wisconsin, what's northern Wisconsin. And we brought all of those elements together in what you see in front of you. The the idea behind the casual connection to the beach, we created seating elements along the front of the building, an outdoor seating area, a bar area that potentially could be indoor, outdoor. Now, obviously, the bar and the use and the actual design program would be by the end user, of course. But these are items that we proposed in the design concept that would work if the end user so chooses to do so. We'd have also an upper deck seating area that's connected to the interior through the second floor or from the exterior staircase exit or access from the stairs if so choose. So the other thing that was incorporated into the design is connection actually from the beach to be able to go up and do an order at a window. Actually stay outside of the restaurant and be able to order outside of the window at the restaurant and be able to go back to the beach. So all those elements were incorporated into this. And then we incorporated a connection to what could be a future boardwalk. So the restaurant would actually be site and placed along a walkway that would extend out to at least the beach. In future concepts that were put together, I realized they haven't been set in motion or set forth today, but some of those things were illustrated in concepts, and we thought that was a strong element at the beach and wanted to hold true to that. So it works no matter which way you decide to go in the future. The building itself and the use of materials, we've been respectful of the idea of low maintenance, but yet using natural materials. So we would use composite wood elements for the exterior finishes, as well as a masonry stone features to kind of complement some of the municipal structures that are also in the community. In regard to some of the design elements and the connections themselves, we've basically the side facing the lake has open glass door elements that the overhead doors can actually open up. So on a nice day, maybe a little cooler than today, we could open those overhead doors and actually have a inside-outside connection. And that happens both on the first floor and the second floor. Furthermore, we looked at how the building would, how accessible elements would be treated in the building. So obviously we have a first floor, and that in itself offers accessible seating. But we created a loft area on a second floor, and so we wanted to present the idea, or the option at least, to have a lift or a lula for that second floor, and an expanded second floor if you were to go that route, whereby you could have maybe a private party or an event on the expanded second floor loft. So those are some of the, I guess, additional thoughts or ideas that are in this design. Those could be catered to go in the project or out of the project, or priced out and bid separately to get a number on it to determine whether that would work. So I believe I covered the major elements, and I guess I'll hand it back over, or if there's any, do we want to do questions today? I don't know.
If you'd like to ask questions of the architect, I can hold off on the budget side of the discussion, or I can jump right in.
Take some design questions.
Yep, go for it.
The design looks very nice, thank you. I think it accomplishes a lot of the goals that we set out. As far as the occupancy goes, do you know what the occupancy is of the inside and the outside numbers?
That's a good question. I don't have that number actually right in front of me. In a few minutes here, I could have that number for you, though.
Okay. And then my second question is probably related to alcohol consumption. It seems like a pretty open design on the outside. Is there, I'm not sure what the laws are. Has that been reviewed? And
Sandy Beach permits the consumption of alcohol.
okay, great, thank you. They answered that question.
Any other design architecture questions?
I do. So I've had the pleasure of working in the restaurant business and wondering about the upper floor and food service to the upper floor. Is the service or are the servers expected to go up the stairs with the food, or are they using the, as you put it, lula? You know, what exactly were your thoughts there?
Dan Smith, we haven't made a full decision about that yet, but it's definitely been a topic of conversation, whether that's something where if you're going to use the balcony and sit upstairs, we might use a buzzer system where you'll have to come down to the bar to pick up your food, maybe a separate menu for that area, or potentially having dedicated servers that want to do that. So we wouldn't be forcing all of our servers to go up and down stairs.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that, because those stairs with those trays, man.
Yes, yep.
It's going to be a problem.
Yep.
And then with that in mind, is there enough space from the Lula for maneuverability of wheelchairs and any other devices that people with mobility issues use? Can they get around?
Yes, they can. And the Lula does meet all ADA accessibility codes, ANSI 117.1.
I knew that. I just didn't know if the space outside of it was enough to where there was enough, maneuverability.
Mm-hmm.
Microphone?
Is your mic on?
I was curious about the occupancy as well, and also wondering, so the previous sandbar was single story, and this is 2 stories, and I can appreciate like some of the amenities that people might enjoy having a second floor, and I was wondering if part of that was for capacity of, for the restaurateur.
So I do have some numbers. I have a person on the outside helping me here. So we have seating in the base plan for roughly 100 that doesn't include the exterior seating, that doesn't include the extended loft area that we have in the design.
So 100 would be indoors.
That'd be 100 indoors
Okay.
with the base floor plan on the first floor and the second floor along the windows. There's like a 10-foot expanse along the windows.
What was the occupancy of the old one?
Not that much.
Not that much.
I don't, you think?
Yeah, between 85 and 112.
Was it really?
It was a little bit tighter, though.
Yeah.
It was a tighter
I
fit.
didn't
Might have been
seem that
snug.
feel it large to me, okay.
Okay. I don't know if you were, I don't think there was anything in our RFP, or if you were asked to incorporate any of this, but in our comprehensive plan, we advocate for sustainable design features, renewable energy features. Is there a possibility of incorporating anything like that in this facility, solar panels, those kinds of things?
Those elements could be incorporated. We actually are just starting the process with our engineers. We will have a kickoff meeting within the week, and we definitely can bring that to the forefront. I do appreciate the comment today, because it helps us steer. What I would say is almost all materials that we're using in buildings now are LEED certified and green and renewable. It's very rare to even find products on the market, because this has been such a strong movement. It's very rare to find products on the market that don't meet those requirements. But obviously on the energy side, you could take it to another level, like you mentioned, solar, energy reclamation. There's many other things that can be done.
Well, and I don't know if that's, ultimately what the, what the city will decide to incorporate, but I think, based on our comprehensive plan, if we're going to build a facility, if we advocate for it for other facilities, we should be, walking the talk. And I know that it needs something like solar panels. You'd need to design a roof, a little bit stronger maybe to accommodate that weight. I also know there's grants, focus on energy, maybe something through WPPI. So just trying to think about, funding and, related to the budget, would there be some opportunities there where there might be an initial additional cost, but it could give us some savings down the road?
Some of the grants, the grants aren't as strong as they used to be, but there are still some grants out there for those elements. They probably, in my experience, they probably will not make up for the full offset on the cost.
Sure. Right. No, they wouldn't cover the entire cost, but they would maybe cost share.
Yeah, for the up cost on perhaps adding solar, it won't cover that full cost. So you'll still have to make up a difference in shortfall for the increase in selecting solar perhaps for a design element. I'm just using that as an example.
Sure. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So there, again, there might be a little bit of additional cost on the front end, but then presumably there would be some
Correct.
Energy savings.
Long-term energy savings would be
Long-term,
there.
okay.
That kind of gets you back to square one, but you're kind of fronting the money to still get that off. The grant helps lessen that blow, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle?
In looking at the rendering for picture outdoor bar concessions, number 6, and again, I come at it from a mindset of a mom and as a special ed teacher. As the side of the boardwalk, which I love, by the way, the side of the boardwalk, is that going to be even with whatever the landscaping is going to be outside of there, so that there isn't a possibility that someone's foot may slip and ankles are broken or something to that effect, anything that can prevent injury. And it might be, it might be something small, but it's still something, it's the what if game,
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think our initial design was to have some sunken seating areas at some of the gas fire pit areas. But it wouldn't have to be that way. We certainly could set those at the same height that the boardwalk and the patio area are already set at. We are setting the boardwalk and the patio all on the same plane.
Okay.
So if there was a step, it would be down to a fire pit area, but hearing a comment such as this, we could design it so that it isn't.
Ramps are good.
Any other questions on design elements? Thank you very much. Drake, you said you had some financial information to share.
Sure. So the base plan that that's been discussed, there's a conservative budget estimate of just about $2,050,000. That is a conservative estimate, so we're erring on the side of overestimating the cost of it. And then there are the add-on features that the council could choose to pursue. The lift or the elevator feature would be an additional $250,000. An expanded deck would be $92,000. The expanded second floor that he mentioned would be $122,000 additionally. And a construction of a partial boardwalk would be approximately $68,000. So I talked to our financial advisor and as well as Sam, and this debt that we would take out to fund this, since it is for a private benefit, will be taxable debt, which is going to carry a higher interest rate for us. We would likely finance it through the state trust fund loan, which is at a 6% interest rate right now for taxable debt. So just to, if the city council, tonight told us, reverse course a little bit, pare this down, get it, as close to $1.5 million estimate as possible, significantly shrink the scope of this building. We are still looking at an annual principal and interest payment of $130,000, just under $131,000 a year for 20 years. At a $2 million number, we're at just under $175,000 in principal and interest payments a year on that debt.
Drake, just want to make sure that we're all catching this because I see everybody's writing this down. So you said if we had this scaled down to 1.5 million, which I think is what we initially budgeted for the building, then it's close to $131,000 annual principal and interest for a 20-year
Correct.
loan. And then if it was the 2 million, then it goes up to.
175,000.
Thank you.
If you added in some of the additional features and it rose to 2.5 million, we are at a $218,000 principal and interest payment. So I bring this up because in the proposal from our restaurateur, they've been very open with us that the maximum lease that they could contribute and maintain viability for a successful restaurant is $75,000 a year. So we are obviously not at the point where that lease revenue is going to cover the carrying cost of this loan. So that is what the city council is grappling with, is your decision on how much of a public subsidy you are willing to provide this amenity at Sandy Beach. We subsidize activities as a local government, so it's not unheard of, but I brought it up before, but I want to dispel any belief that this will be a zero cost option for the city, that the lease will fully cover the cost of the loan each year. The restaurateur has indicated an openness to negotiating a percentage of profits so that when they succeed, we succeed. So there could be something in addition to that lease revenue. We have not executed a lease with the restaurateur, so this is all theoretical at this point. But I just wanted to let you know that is where the budget is standing and what point, and that even at a $1.5 million, which I don't even know if it's possible to scale that down and maintain a viable business plan, to maintain the amount of patrons that they would want, that they need to have in order to successfully operate the business. We were still not at the point where that lease revenue will cover the principal and interest payments. So that's the information I have for you to consider as you're contemplating the project and design and moving forward and preparing for referendum in November if the council authorizes that language.
To go to referendum, we're probably looking at making that decision in the August time period?
Well, we would, in order to be on time to go to referendum and to have actual numbers to put into that referendum language, we're looking to bid in July and bring that information to the city council in August, that budget information with proposed referendum language, which needs to be adopted. It's 70 days before the November election, which is August 20-something. So it would be approved no later than the second city council meeting in August.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions or comments? So in our agenda, this is listed for potential action. So are you looking for anything particular from the council this evening?
You can give us general direction that we're on the right path, that you like this design. You can make decisions, you can indicate to us that you absolutely do want for example, the lift installed. The lift is not required because of the size of the building, but we also understand this will be a public building, and the city council may desire to ensure that the entire building is as accessible as possible. But that does come with that $250,000 cost. So we can take feedback like that. You could tell me that the budget numbers are unsatisfactory to you, and that we need to, think more, consider the future of the project. I don't know where the city council is standing right now on it. As I said at the beginning of this process, there's always multiple points where the city council can choose to go a different direction. The further along in the process we get, the higher your sunk costs get. So this is one of those opportunities to say, based on this design, based on the budget numbers that we're seeing, how do you want to proceed? Now, if we're on the right track, the design is satisfactory to you, the budget numbers are within your expectations, and we continue with that, with those estimates, and continue on to finalizing and to getting more finalized plans, and continuing to prepare to bid this project, then we will continue to do that. So you don't necessarily have to take any action, but it's available to you.
Anyone have a comment?
I have a clarifying question. I know we wanted to have 2 floors. If we didn't, it would significantly decrease the amount of patrons that can be served. However, would it decrease, or how much would it decrease the cost?
Well, we could explore that. I'd want to have a conversation with our proposed restaurateur as well to make sure that we're maintaining a minimum size of the building that makes it profitable based on their business plan. So we could certainly explore that as an option, but I don't have any answers for you on what reducing to a single story would do budgetarily, or if it would affect the business plan of our proposed partner.
Okay.
Steve?
With putting budgets together for this, or looking at it as a whole with the different options, is there any kind of marketing study that we can get with this to show potential revenue that this may help bring to the city? Whether, maybe help justify a hotel or other things to help offset the costs? I know we're not going to get to net zero, but I mean, to look at just, versus just what's our sunk cost versus this, but what is the benefit also to the city or additional revenue that might bring in?
Yeah, we might be able, there will be a general, we hope, a general benefit to the local economy as far as visitors and things like that. It's, other than a potential share of profits, it's unlikely that we would realize that any actual revenue from that. Now, if we did have a hotel that came in and that we did establish a room tax, that would be additional revenue. I think it'd be difficult to figure out what portion of that would be tied to having a restaurant downtown. I believe there was a preliminary analysis when they did the concept review, when Mead and Hunt put that together years ago, but it's likely woefully outdated. I don't know that we'd be able to put together such an analysis before we needed to go out to bid in order for it to make the deadline for the November referendum.
Greg?
I like the thought process that Mr. Fields is going with. Also, the community, this project would provide a lot of lake access. There's only a certain percentage of the population that live on the lake, and this allows other people to have access to the lake in a unique way. And I just remember the sunsets from the old Sandy Beach restaurant. They were awesome, and I'm sure that this site would have many more sunsets like that for the community. The numbers, I'd like to digest that a little bit more, probably have some further discussion with staff before I would form an opinion, but in general, I like the direction that things are going, and the project looks beautiful. I think it would be a good fit for the community.
Yeah, I think that is a good point by both Mr. Fields and Mr. Waters, is we have not quantified, are not really able to qualify, I guess, what in economic terms would be called a positive externality, right? The indirect benefits of having this restaurant exist, the enjoyment that residents and visitors would get out of it, things of that nature. So there are non-financial considerations with this project that may factor into a decision that don't directly translate to dollars and cents.
Mary?
I'm going to echo some of the comments. I actually think this particular project is a differentiator for the city of Lake Mills and for the county and surrounding counties. It's going to be unique. We have these beaches and they bring a lot of residents together and visitors. And so I think it is a reason for people to move here. People say they move here because we have this lake and this lovely community, and people visit here. It's a part of the strategic plan. And I'm also chewing a little bit on the finances, but as I think about what you need to have versus what is nice to have, I would be open to foregoing the expanded second floor, the boardwalk. I mean, those are things that I would be interested in understanding. Could they be a second phase, a third phase, or some other phase in the future? If we focus on the primary is bringing people together to dine and to converse and to enjoy the sunsets and the beach, I would I would be supportive of focusing on the must-haves versus the things that make us maybe need to have. And I am also very impressed. I'm not an expert on home design, but impressed that it's a square building. It's not really crazy. My father-in-law built a lot of homes and said the more corners you have, the more your costs go up. So I'm very impressed that I see something that is a simple structure. It's cool, but it doesn't scream we're spending money unwisely, because it's not anything that looks really I don't know, busy, over the top, yes, although super cool. And so the 2 million gives me a little bit of a heartburn. When you put I like the numbers just worked in my head a little bit better when you said the 75,000 maximum lease revenue and the 131 per year. It's like, oh, okay. So you got a little less than half that's sitting in our pocketbook that we're paying out. And so I like the numbers on that better, but I appreciate the challenge to pull a $500,000 out, or $500,000 plus, because you're at 2.15. And so if there are any low-hanging fruit, it'd be interesting to know what they are and what would the compromise would be. Because when I look at the building, it's just kind of good, solid, fundamentals that I think are necessary for a building such as this. So I'm also, because a little heartburn on the higher number, but I'm only because it's, the 175 to the 75, maximum you have 100,000 still unspoken for, and that's not taking into consideration what you might uncover as you're building it. But I would support moving forward.
So I'd like to add some comments. The $2 million to me gives me significant pause. And when I look back on why this is in our strategic plan, and if you look back through the annals of when Steve was on the council, or was the only one here that was on the council, and what's the purpose and need of this project, it really was failing infrastructure, safety issues, parking issues, the restaurant being a part of an aging infrastructure, an aging structure that wasn't sustainable. If we're going to do a project here, I think we need to do it the right way, and that's expensive. But I would say, since I've been on the council in the early years, different people have talked to me about, when are we going to have a restaurant at Sandy Beach? When are we going to have a restaurant at Sandy Beach? And I didn't make an exact tally, but I would say most of them were not the city taxpayers. And in the last 3 months, multiple constituents, city taxpayers, have asked me about this project and have said, is this really what we should be investing our money in when we have the mill pond that is going to need some work, when we have the library, when we have wastewater treatment plant needs, when we have school system needs, and our existing services that we are providing the community are in need of investment. And so I really feel a significant pause. If we're going to do a building, I think we need to do it right. The idea, and I know we can invest in whatever we want and we can subsidize things, the idea that we would take on all the risk, really, because that $75,000, there's no guarantee that we're going to get that $75,000 every year under a lease. I hope this restaurateur or some future restaurateur is successful and that we will get that. But we're basically saying that we're going to ask our taxpayers to pay for the balance of that. And to me, that's a significant ask. And I've had multiple constituents say, I'm not sure that that's really where I want my money to be spent when I think about these other priorities. It's ironic that this dollar amount is very close to the dollar amount for a typical street reconstruction project that we have every year. We already put one off for this year to make space for this project. I don't know if we're going to put one off another year, but this dollar amount really concerns me. Hearing what other people said, I'm not sure that there's going to be a majority support for pulling back all the way. Frankly, I would recommend tonight that we really scale this back significantly. I'd like to see something one story and closer to that 1.5 million. We don't know what all the taxpayers think until we go to referendum. But I have significant pause about this. It's very concerning to me and to some of the constituents that I've talked to about it. Michelle.
I'm going to, agree with you on many of the points, and also say that the concept that we've been able to look at today was based on the recommendations that were given by the people who were surveyed, which includes constituents. So yes, I agree that it's a big ask, right? And as one of the taxpayers in this city, I would take pause as well. That's why I kind of asked if there's a possibility that it could only be one story, because the original restaurant was only one story. And I remember that the reason why we wanted to have 2 stories was because there was a need for more places for group meetings or group get-togethers, reunions, and things of that nature. However, I doubt that the people who would be looking for that kind of environment would be keen on the idea of spending more tax money to do it. So I am at a point where I don't know that I could move forward with the way things are at this point. And obviously, there's other things on the agenda that, and our continuing agenda and our strategic plan that we really need to think about where that money is going.
I just want to clarify, the expanded second floor is not included in the $2,050,000. So that was one of the additions. So there is a mezzanine, there's a mezzanine in the base plan that has some seating available, but it wouldn't be, I wouldn't consider it to be like a meeting space on the second floor. I think you'd have to, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you'd have to go with the expanded second floor in order to have a viable meeting space room or something that could be rented out or something like that.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the base plan, which is 1 story, is no, okay, help me understand. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, so that is correct, but I'll kind of reword it a little bit. So in the $2,050,000 number right now, we have a mezzanine and an outdoor seating area. That's the base plan, that's in that number. Then there's an add, if you wanted to expand the seating on the second floor on the inside, and an add if you want to expand the seating on the outside as well, for over the boardwalk.
So the plans that we have, it's sort of a partial second floor, right, if you will?
It is, and I constructed this, I think, with the idea in mind, because I do understand the decision you have to make, and so that's why I tried to put this together the way I did, where we can put things together in a way that where you can bid it out and you can get pricing, and it can be a little bit of a selection. Now you're kicking that can down the road a little bit, where the tough decisions will have to be made at some point. But it's a little bit of a pick and choose item menu right now. To answer the second floor in total, we probably could look at that way as well. I don't want to throw total numbers out because operationally there's a whole impact here on that side of things. But construction-wise, if I may, I do have a rough number on that. So $340,000 right now if I cut the deck out on the outside on the second floor and cut the mezzanine out on the inside.
It would be a reduction by $340,000.
A reduction of $340,000.
Okay.
Yep,
So that takes you about to 1.7, roughly.
roughly.
Okay. Okay.
So just to speak in general, there's a lot of money in tonight's agenda.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone was adding numbers up, but it was very high. And we've had discussions about having a goal-setting meeting to understand what are the goals of this council. And when we look at piecemealing these dollars and voting on them one by one, it's kind of a scattered approach. And it'd be nice to kind of get our ducks in a row a little bit there. I know that the community, when I knock on doors and I talk to people, their number one priority is the Sandy Beach restaurant. Overwhelmingly, the Sandy Beach restaurant is very popular. We've surveyed this in the past, I think twice, and I don't want to misquote a number, but the numbers are very, very high about the approval rating for a Sandy Beach restaurant. So I definitely want to see us continue to move forward on this and work for a solution that's good for the community.
So you're getting a variety of feedback.
Yeah,
tonight.
so I mean, if the council is okay with continuing down this path towards the Sandy Beach restaurant, what we'll do is we'll continue design, we will continue to break out, I don't know what that means. We will continue to break out your decision points as far as cost reductions. We will run those decision points by our proposed partner, the restaurateur, to determine if there'd be an adverse impact on the viability of their business plan if the city made certain decisions. And then when we come back to you next, we will have, I guess, for lack of a better, a menu for you to all choose from. Or choose to identify some of them as bid alternates that you could choose at time of award to incorporate into the plan.
Somebody had brought up the idea of phases. Could we look at possibly a phase 1, phase 2 type of thing?
I think we can, we'll explore it with the architect and the restaurateur. There's probably different pieces of the proposed plan that lend themselves better to phasing than others.
Okay.
But we'll take that feedback and discuss it with the architect team and Garver, the restaurateur.
Mary?
May I also ask what the adjacent additional investments are, what are, it's going to be required to support the restaurant that hasn't been a part of the bid also, such as parking, addition, renovation, or other infrastructure that might be necessary? I think that would be getting back to the planning and the discussion. I agree with you, Greg, about, we have a lot of singleton items, but looking at them on an aggregate and a whole, that is, you have a little bit of a domino of other investments that are going to be required. And I think that's, we're starting at this number now, but if we have additional investments, I think that'd be important to know what those are or could be.
So yes and no, right? So the restaurant is the first part of the proposed, I guess it's actually the second part of the proposed Sandy Beach redevelopment. If we didn't build anything, no restaurant, we still need to redo that parking lot because we still need to get underneath of it to the utility infrastructure beneath it. So by choosing not to do a restaurant, you will not be removing the need to do the next phases of the Sandy Beach redevelopment plan.
Okay.
So the parking lot hasn't been designed. There is a contemplated number in our CIP currently. That's kind of the next after that we do it after the Sandy Beach restaurant decision has been made, because we'll want to design that parking lot to have the success of the restaurant in mind and accessibility to the restaurant in mind as well. So what you saw in the original concept plan is not the final, what that will look like. No decisions have been made on what that parking lot will look like in the future, but I guess just to reiterate the point, if we built nothing and there was never a restaurant, it does not stop the investments that need to be made at the remainder of the park.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments for tonight? So you've heard some concerns about the costs, and it sounds like the next steps are going to be to move forward, but to try to build it in maybe a different base plan and then add on so that we can talk about that further.
Yeah, we'll have different decision points for the council to make and as to what's going to be incorporated in the final plan that goes out for bid.
And again, the timing on that, when we would need to go out for bid?
We have to go out in July, so we'll be talking about it.
Next month?
Yes.
Okay.
So the third week in July, probably.
I can't remember our schedule. I think we contemplated authorization to bid July 18th, out for bid for 3 weeks, and then back for approval at the second meeting in August.
That sounds right. Don't hold me to that. I don't have it right in front of me right this second. But the reason we came here tonight was because we did decide that if we waited to the next meeting, it would adversely impact this schedule. We did have a little bit of flexibility here to call for special meeting to go before you between now and that date in July to hold the schedule on point. So
So based on the feedback that you've received tonight, we can stay on schedule and
I believe so, yes.
then make a decision at our second meeting
If
in
we do
July.
need a special meeting, I will obviously contact the council and try and get one scheduled.
Okay. Any other comments on this item for tonight? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Jeremy. Okay, and thank you to everyone else in the room for your patience. We still have a number of other items to go. If there are no objections, I guess what I'd like to do is move the library expansion project next, because I think staff will be staying here regardless. But I know we have a number of the members of the library board. Any objection to jumping down to letter G? So that's Resolution 24-46. Misty, when you're ready, could you read that title for us?
City Council Resolution 24-46, resolution in support of the LD Fargo Library Expansion Project, an application for the Flexible Facilities Program Grant, and a pledge of $1,700,000 of city capital funds in support of the project.
I move to approve Resolution 24-46 in support of the LD Fargo Library Expansion Project.
Is there a second?
Can we have discussion?
I'll second for purposes of discussion. So motion by Ms. Quidnow, seconded by Ms. Curler. And so there was a number of documents that I think were attached yesterday to go with this agenda item, including a memo from our library director, Gerard Saylor. So welcome, Gerard, and
Thanks.
turn it over to you.
Nothing too much to add that isn't already in the memo. The importance of this is that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the grant money. So this is ARPA money that needs to be spent, and it's due July 11th. And what we're asking for through the grant is $4.25 million for a construction project to add on a second-story addition to the north side of the building and renovate the existing parts of the building. And if the city is going to come in with this on us, is an important part to getting the grant to show that you have matching funds for it. And so the architects went back and looked at our existing, what we're calling a master plan for now, and split it into two phases to be able to come up with something that's more affordable. And project cost of 6.5. I don't remember the exact numbers. It's in the memo. And so slightly under 6.4. And so about 400,000 of that would come from library savings in our building fund that we've been building up. And then about a third of that would come from city money. And that would be, assuming, of course, we did get the full grant approval.
So the resolution before you is dependent upon, the pledge is dependent upon getting the grant. So that the 1.7 million pledge would dissolve if the grant was not awarded. The grant will be awarded no later than October of this year. There is the maximum amount of points that get awarded on the grant is given to applicants that show that the local applicant, the local governing body, the city is contributing to the project, that the grant is not fully covering the cost of the project. And so the likelihood of receiving the grant increases if the city council expresses their support. The funds need to be spent by September of 2026. So there is some time to complete design, bid, construct, and some flexibility in, years and how we would structure debt in order to fund that 1.7 million. Obviously, the decision point before you, as we were made aware of the grant, the library board was made aware of the grant, and in their decision to pursue it, we have the deadline of July 11th, and so that's why it is before you right now for that pledge. Obviously, we weren't successful in our congressionally directed funding. A 4.25 of a $6.4 million project is a significant piece of it that makes it more financially viable. But obviously, it is still under consideration with the competing priorities and budgetary needs throughout our capital plan.
Right. We were able to cut down the amount of money we'd be asking the city to put forward to the project as well by cutting into a phase one. So the original thought was we were going to ask for up to $3 million. We're asking for about half of that now. So that's a big benefit of the FFP grant if we're able to split it into two different phases and be able to do that. And it's going to be scored on 100 points. 70 points is going to be from project need and project reach. And so that's just narrative descriptions. We should make pretty good arguments for that. And a full 10 points will be for matching funds. And, but my presumption is we'd get a bulk of those points when they're grading the grants. And in my time in grading grants myself, it's all these little things that just add up and get you a good score. And for the orientation for the grant application, they mentioned that nobody's going to get 100 points because it's really a lot of variation on what they're looking for. But the idea is to get as many as we can and try to get as much money as we can.
Gerard, if you could give them kind of an overview of that need, why an expansion at the library is necessary, the programming requirements, the square footage requirements, collection requirements, things that the library board's identified over the years as those deficiencies.
Sure. Well, the library's been undersized for about 20 to 30 years. The last edition was completed in 1966. And population in 1970 was a little over 3,000, and we're double that now. And the building itself is half the size of what it should be. And we started in earnest to research and pursue a project in 2019, hired FEH architects to do basically a building study and look at what we have available versus what we should have available for our service area. And keep in mind, it's not just the city of Lake Mills at 6,400 people. Our service area goes outwards to the townships to about 10,000 people. And everything is undersized, even just elbow room, which is an important feature nowadays for just being a public community meeting space. We just don't have the space available. We don't have the meeting room space available. We don't have study rooms. We don't have tutoring rooms. We don't even just have enough chairs for people to come in and sit down at. And that's a key part of it. And tying into that too, the collection size, libraries have always been key to educational performance for children as well. I mean, early literacy is well known about how important it is. That's why at the state level, they work to make sure all the kids are at a proper reading level by third or fourth grade. And library is an important part of that. And it's something we do a fantastic job, but we could do a lot more. And so we've been working on this project for a while now, identified the size, came up with some plans, fielded those with the public over a 2-day session back in late 2019, done presentations to the city council, worked with the city, worked with the community to try to come up with a plan. Did I miss anything? I can keep talking. It's not humid in here at all. It's a one-time grant, as the board president reminded me to emphasize. It's not going to be available again. Once the money is gone, it's gone. And people always talk about having grants as funding possibilities, but it feels a little more pie in the sky. I mean, this could be too, but it's there and it's available. We know it's going to be very competitive. We want to get as many points as we can. But it's a sure source of funding that's there. We're currently doing capital fundraising project. We're going to be starting that in earnest in August. That's going to take a while to spool up and start to build. And that could be a 2, 3, 4-year project or longer. Or somebody might write us a check for $5 million, who knows?
Gerard, can you specify when the library board found out about the grant opportunity?
Very recently. That was, the information didn't really become available until I think April. And we've been working on it, yeah.
I feel like we probably didn't get to talking about it until May, if I'm not
At the
mistaken.
library board, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state has a very short window. They pretty much made the announcement and got the grants out there and said, you've got 2 months to get it filled out and turned in. And you have to line up all your dominoes. And so it's really ideal for someone like us who've already have a project in the works. I mean, we have plans, we have experience in working with this, we have some momentum to it as well. And if we could show council support, that's even more.
I sent you a couple questions by email today that you responded, so I just wanted to maybe go through them for everyone else. So the cost of this phase one is, based on your memo, is $6,345,000. The grant would be $4,250,000. Then the library board is committing their funds of $400,000. So the rest that would need to be matched is $1.7 million.
Correct.
And then that's, if I understand it right, the grant application requires you to document that match is there. So that's why
Yes.
we would need to pass some kind of resolution saying that we're committing to this.
That's correct.
Okay, and then this would be based on the timing of the grant and the project. What year would this go into our city budget? Would be like 2025? As a capital?
Yeah, and there's a few steps there, and I've said over and over again, pledge, because if the grant doesn't come through, then the city doesn't have to feel any obligations to follow through. But even if the city approves, it has to go to advisory referendum anyway, and that's not going to be out till October, so you wouldn't be able to have an advisory vote until spring to the public. But then the city administration would have more time to plan out that expenditure for capital. And so you can get that into the 25, or talk about it in 25, get in the 26 budget, and then start construction in 26 is the way I was looking at it.
Okay, and thank you for the reminder that we would still have to do that advisory referendum.
Oh, yeah.
And that wouldn't be in November, that would be next year.
Yeah, so, yeah, correct. And then for the, what year it would enter basically our capital budget, when we would borrow from it, it's going to depend. I'll have to dig a bit more, if the grant is awarded, dig into the rules of the grant. If the grant money can be expended first, we might be able to wait until 2026 to borrow the dollars, because the 1.7 could be the last money that we spend. If they want the match funds spent first, then it likely becomes necessary to borrow the funds in 2025. So it just depends on, what the rules surrounding the grant are, and then once we hit that schedule, knowing we have to expend the grant funds by September of 2026, what year we actually end up borrowing those funds will either be 25 or 26, but we don't know for sure at this point.
Okay, wouldn't be before that, though, before 25?
No.
Okay.
Question about the taking on debt in relation to what we were just talking about with Sandy Beach. You mentioned that it was a taxable debt, which means it's a higher interest rate. How would this debt be different?
It's for public benefit only, so it's a tax exempt under state and federal guidelines. So we're at, most recently, a 20-year bond, we've been seeing 4%. It's possible by the time we would borrow this that those rates would be lower. It's possible they could be higher, but most of the information we're receiving is that interest rates should be declining. That's crystal balling though, so that's not quotable.
So one could argue that though it's close to the same price, 1.7 versus 2 point something for taking on debt, the amount of taxable, or the interest that would take part, it's tax exempt. So we would be saving money if we invested in the library expansion, is that correct?
In relation to if it was taxable debt, we will have reduced costs, yes. The vast majority of the debt that we take out is tax exempt, because the vast majority of the debt we take out is for public benefit only. There's no private benefit component. So road projects are tax exempt, public facilities that we utilize are tax exempt, things of that nature.
Right.
But in comparison to debt we would take out, taxable debt we would take out for the Sandy Beach restaurant, we will get better loan terms. That is nearly guaranteed.
Okay, Gerard,
I argue that libraries are always a great investment, so.
I hear you. Can you talk a little bit about why what benefit to the city there would be to have more materials, more books in our facility? What does that get the city in the long run?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I'll rest my voice. This is Cole. He's one of the architects from FEH.
Welcome.
So just to answer your question, it really goes beyond collections and resources, tangible resources that the library offers. Both Gerard and I can speak to the sizing of the collections and the sizing of the resources which we've established are undersized. That's based on our space needs analysis and programming analysis that I have documents that we can refer back to if we want to talk about specific square footages and collections counts. When we presented to City Council most recently, it was January 16th. So that was the presentation that we gave the full evaluation of the space needs analysis. Yes, okay, great. So to answer your question, I would frame it in context of the Lake Mills 2022 strategic plan. And this is really the only thing that I would like to contribute to answering the question. And that's based on the Harwood Institute for Public Innovation, identifying the key components that contribute to a community's quality of life: abundance of community gatherings and organized spaces for interaction. And the library expansion contributes to both of those. Coincidentally, within the strategic plan for Lake Mills 2022, gathering and workspaces is a critical component of that strategic plan. Technology services is a strategic component of that, strategic plan. Community engagement, talent attraction, resident retention, and diversity. Gerard can probably speak to how some of those collections resources contribute to those, but from an overall strategic planning perspective, the library is accomplishing those goals with the expansion. Those are all elements that are lacking in the current library. And another unique parallel to the requirements that make communities have good quality of life, the 2022 strategic plan, and the grant is that the grant application requirements also align with those components. And so the grant application is asking you to prove that you are contributing more gathering and working spaces to your community through a library or a community center. Prove that you are contributing more technology services and community engagement opportunities. So that's how I want to answer the question is that we are looking at that from a strategic planning, a grant application, and the actual needs of the library that establishes the framework for why the community benefits and why the taxpayers do benefit from this expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have comments or questions? Greg?
You did a great job presenting tonight, by the way. You answered almost all my
thanks.
questions, so that's awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Cole.
So I just want to get a couple more clarity points here. So as I read through the proposal, I'm kind of looking at this as like a phase one. It almost looks like there's a phase two also in the write-up. So the phase one is this 6.3. We're looking at funding 1.7, so we're looking at like 27% is the city's responsibility.
Wait, say that again. I didn't quite hear the numbers.
That
Project
sounds correct.
6.3, we're funding 1.7.
With the 4.25 grant
Right. That's the.
Potential.
Right,
that's-
I was rounding up and thinking like a third, yeah.
Yeah, 26 and a half, you're right,
Yeah.
27, 1.7 out of 6.4.
So
is-
phase two is like a total of 11 million, so this 6.3 would come off that 11 million?
That's that expectation. Cole would probably be able to answer that a little better, but we divided up the original plan a little bit. The architects did. And phase two, we haven't looked at too closely. We kind of been focused on phase one. And Cole and I had been talking about that during the break. Do you? Sure. Yeah, he'll address that some more.
So the need for phase two, what we've proposed in this phase one, which is a complete library expansion, fully functioning, fully operational library. When we did our space needs analysis, we evaluated an acceptable number of square footage and collections and staff and meeting space related needs. That was the acceptable, and then we had an ideal. And we planned for the ideal in the 11,000 square foot addition to the 11,000 square foot existing building. So we were looking at an ideal of around 22,000 square feet, all of which is 11,000 of that is new and 11,000 of that is fully renovated library. So with the addition of the second floor, creating a two-story library that is full 2 stories across the entire structure, we were at slightly over 11 million in the calculations because we were looking at a 22,000 square foot renovation plus addition. With this version of phase one, we're looking at about 8,200 square feet addition with very minimal renovations. The main disadvantage that we have of not doing the ideal renovation is that we end up with the 1902?
1902.
We end up with the 1902 building, original being 2-story. We have the 1960s edition being 1-story, and then the 2025 edition being a 2-story that is disconnected on the second floor from the second story of the original 1902. So that's the main disadvantage, is we're not taking the roof off of that 1960s edition to create one contiguous second floor. Another compromise in this option is we're slightly reducing the square footages and the program spaces to meet that 8,200 square foot, $6.4 million budget. And that means we don't have the full scope of the large meeting spaces that we need, and we're slightly less on the collection spaces than what would be ideal. So phase two picks up the additional 3,000 square feet to accomplish that full build out at the ideal collection size, staff areas, and meeting sizes, and it connects that second floor on the addition to the original. That gives us the large meeting room, and that completes the picture. We don't have a budget put together yet for that phase two. We're focusing on the phase one as a portion to pursue the grant, but that phase one is a complete library project that doesn't leave you without a roof or without a children's collections or without staff spaces. So it is a complete project, and the phase two, which is, we don't have a cost associated with it, but we're calculating it to be about 3,000 square feet, is the addition that brings the second floor to fruition and connects both pieces. Does that answer your question?
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And then my follow-up question, I'm not sure if it's Mr. Saylor or Mr. Daly, but it has to do with what I heard was the 1.7 is viable if we get the grant. What if that grant's not fully funded? Maybe we get 50% of the grant. What happens to our contribution at that point?
Yeah, the city council is going to have the capacity to commit more.
to the project, as far as debt capacity that you have remaining under your constitutional debt limits. So yes, we could, whether those numbers, which I would have to work with the financial advisor to run on, how that would impact and fit into the CIP, whether that would necessitate delay of other projects or, other sacrifices or reprioritization, I can't speak to, but if you needed to contribute $3 million to a library project, I'm 90% confident you'll have the capacity to do so. You just may not be able to do everything else that is in that CIP currently. So there'd be a reprioritization, but I believe in the last capital budget we played out, we put a placeholder in there for a library project, not for the approved CIP, but when we were running some scenarios for other items we were discussing, and it fit.
What about the opposite, where they only half fund the grant, and maybe the city council at that point says, we don't want to invest the additional funding for this project? Well, the grant would just go away at that point? How would that work?
I think we'd have to the library board would have to notify them that they're rejecting the grant award.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, they'd probably have a decision to make, and they'd have to talk to the grant coordinator. Because if they got, $2 million and the city said, we're only going to do 1.7 million, the library board will have to consider, do they have a viable project at $3.7 million?
Or maybe the rest comes from a community fundraiser, possibly.
True, the timing gets difficult to raise. They'd have to raise quickly in order to be able to expend those grant funds by September of '26.
Correct. Okay,
But it's possible.
thank you. That answers my question.
Phase two, so right now, currently, phase two, the library board is not contemplating requesting a city contribution for phase two. It's contemplated to be any additional grants they award, community foundation awards they may achieve, and private fundraising. So at this time, the library board is not requesting dollars for phase two. So the scope of that will be entirely based upon the success of their capital campaign and grant writing efforts.
Okay.
I'd like to loop back then on the conversation about the phases. So if I heard you two gentlemen correctly, phase one could be constructed and stand on its own and serve the community for an indefinite period of time until funds were raised for a phase two. Is that correct? I mean, it wouldn't meet maybe all the goals of the size, but it could function.
And that's the way I've been thinking about it. I don't like to talk about it that way because it feels like we'd be ignoring phase two. But I mean, phase one would solve a significant amount of issues that we have just for space. And then we would have time to fundraise for phase two. Yeah.
Thank you. So I guess one question I have for my fellow council members, I know all these documents were just added yesterday, and I'm wondering if people feel that you've had sufficient time to review them, to understand the decision before us, because we do later on the agenda have the opportunity to decide to meet on July 2nd, which would also give us time to further consider this. So I just wanted to put that out there if people are feeling like you need more time, or if people are feeling comfortable making a decision on this tonight.
I am going to speak on behalf of the library board since I sit upon it. I believe that it would be in our best interest to make a decision tonight so that we don't have to interfere with people's holiday week, number one. Number two, it gives Gerard the go-ahead to start doing all of the things having to do with the grant, if not getting it submitted the earlier the better, because we are on such a limited amount of time. I believe that if he waits until the last minute, it could impact the ability of us receiving that money. This is an entirely based upon whether we get it pledge. So if the grant doesn't go through, we don't have to worry about it. And I think as a council, we can decide to do that, knowing that we have the opportunity to pull that money from other locations later when we look at our budget. We're not having to commit $1.7 million by September of this year. That would be impossible. But because we have an opportunity to say, okay, we pledged that we're going to do this, this is good for our community, it fits within the strategic plan because we talked about having a community center that has more meeting rooms and more spaces for people to be able to meet. We have not been able to acquire that, but we can do that through a library expansion. And it benefits the children of our community as well, because no longer is the children's area going to be in the basement, which, you know, is what it is. At least the air conditioning is nice down there. But the point is that you have to have a more well-lit space. It provides more opportunities, books in hands, as opposed to reading on tablets. And I know that a lot of kids like to read on tablets, my own included, but having books in hand is fundamentally more impactful than seeing it on a tablet. So obviously, I'm a little biased in this situation, but I believe wholeheartedly that it is in our best interest to invest this money, or the thought of investing this money, so that we can say, we've made this impact on the community, and in such a way that it's not just about community rooms, it's even more about the future of our community.
I'm good with the decision tonight.
Anybody else have a concern?
No, the only question I have, I know we talked about at the end of 2023, our total debt was at 39.4, and I'm not sure what kind of carryover and other investments that we're making to know where we're going to sit at the end of 24. So as we're looking at 25, how this 1.7 million stacks up against getting towards our state statute limits. Because this gets back to the planning, we have a lot of very large ticket items, and I am worried about multi-million-dollar decisions stacking up, and we're doing them on an a la carte basis, and I'm curious on the aggregate, what we're facing. That's my pause for
What will we be at the end of this year? I don't have an exact number, but if we are at 39%, my guess is that by the end of 24, when we take out any debt in the 50s, Sam, if I had to ballpark it, I can find that, I can get that number tomorrow. Right, and I guess as a percentage of capacity.
Yeah.
You know, the 61% at the end of 23 that remained in capacity, which we wouldn't go up, we don't want to go up to 100% of our capacity, obviously, but that represents millions and millions and millions of dollars of capacity. And so it exists, the capacity exists. Will we have to modify, is it possible we might have to modify schedules of other projects, delay things, structure debt differently, and reprioritize? Yes, it's possible. We have done that in the past when we've received significant grant dollars for a project. We have moved them up on the list. We haven't yet run an analysis on how the funding we've received, the $1.8 million we've received in street-related grant money to offset future street projects will have on the CIP, because we are building the CIP right now, but that's an offset for projects that will jump closer to the front that we are anticipating doing a full, local funding for without those. So I can get a debt schedule run and out to the city council, but you'll have the flexibility to move projects around in order to fit a $1.7 million contribution to a library project. I'm confident in saying that. What I can't tell you is that you'll be able to do everything that's on your list of things that you want to do exactly when you've wanted to do them in the past, based on, the library project jumping to the front of the line here, basically.
Okay.
But there's flexibility in how we decide to do projects.
So I'm not real happy about a 1.7 being thrown out in front of us tonight, but at the same time, I do recognize the opportunity that exists here, where we're looking at roughly paying for 26% and getting most of the rest of that in grant money. That's a nice opportunity. It doesn't come along very often. The library is high on my list, but it's not the number one project on my list. But I do like the opportunity and feel that it's something that we should jump on. So.
Any other comments? I guess I'll just add my 2 cents worth as well. I'm generally in support of the library expansion, and I will vote in favor of this tonight. I wish we had more time to digest the information. I wish that I don't think this really is on our priority list, so to speak, in the short term, and so we are having to, I think, kind of grapple with all the different things that are competing demands for funds. I am concerned about just the big picture of the cost of Phase 1 and Phase 2. You know, we were originally, several years ago, when I was on the library board, I think it was like a $4 to $6 million project, then it became an $8 million project, then it became an $11 million project. And so now here we've got a piece of the $11 million project. I don't know that an $11 million project is one package is going to be viable for our community.
No, 11
So-
million isn't viable. And we've been talking about that the board has been talking about that the dollar amount has to go down.
Well, I appreciate that. And so I guess I'm just, again, I don't want to see either, failing to be able to fundraise for the Phase 2 or for more dollars being requested from City Council because we didn't, sort of scale down our expenses. So I just hope that the library board will, take a close look at that. If this moves ahead, we get this grant and it's done in phases to really look at, what can be done with Phase 2 and try to be as economical as possible. So those are my thoughts. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, let's have a roll call vote on Resolution 24-46.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Nay.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you. And thank you, Gerard and Cole, for being here this evening, and the library board members, thank you for all your work on this.
Just to follow up on the question that we had received, in the most recent debt analysis I had run, which contemplated a higher library contribution borrow in 2026 and incorporated the 2024 general obligation bonds, in 2026 with that borrow that would have came on, we were looking at 64% of our debt capacity.
That's what I remembered, yeah.
Under the CIP that I had sent to Ellers for analysis, we peaked in our capacity at 65% in 2028. So those numbers fluctuate. They change based on decisions that we make and where we put them in, but that would have incorporated nearly $4.5 million in 2025 borrowing, had nearly $6 million in 2025 borrowing, and then in 2026 had nearly $8 million in 2026 borrowing. And all of those borrowings led us to the 64% of the debt capacity. So that's what I mean when I tell you you'll have flexibility in the capacity to incorporate projects and move things around. You can kind of see how multiple $million-dollar borrows do move the debt capacity number, but that debt capacity is based on a percentage of our value, and the value of Lake Mills goes up every year as well. So our debt is a smaller percentage of that every year, barring, a 2008 where your values, plummet, which has happened once, So 64%, we should be, if we did everything that was in our CIP that I sent to Ellers, which was a significant amount of proposed capital borrowing, is the capacity we would hit. And I can share that document with the council.
Thank you, appreciate that. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so if, oh, did someone say they had a question? Okay. So if I'm keeping track correctly, we need to go back to letter E, which is Resolution 24-44, the wastewater treatment plant, CMAR. Misty, would you read that title for us, please?
City Council Resolution 24-44, authorizing the city manager and staff to submit the Lake Mills Wastewater Treatment Plant Compliance Maintenance Annual Report to the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources.
Move to approve Resolution 24-44, wastewater treatment plant compliance maintenance annual report.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Schmager. Staff?
It's an annual approval. You can see that we scored very well again this year. The Public Works Board did recommend that the City Council approve this resolution. It is due by the end of June to the DNR. If you have any questions on the report, Randy is available, and Dwayne's also available if there's any clarification we can provide.
Are there any questions or comments on the report?
I got a comment. I'd like to compliment the staff for a wonderful report card. I think 100% in every category but one, and that was a B. Got a 90% in that category, so awesome job to the staff.
I would like to echo that. Thank you very much, particularly to Bill Kiesling, our award-winning operator in charge. Appreciate all of his work to keep the plant running efficiently and effectively. Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please, on Resolution 24-44.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to letter F, we have Resolution 24-45, which is related to Brookstone Phase 8. Misty, would you read that title for us?
City Council Resolution 24-45, authorizing city manager to execute an assignment and assumption agreement pertaining to the lots in Brookstone Phase 8 in accordance with the development agreement by and between the City of Lake Mills and Riverwood Holdings LLC.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 24-45, authorizing city manager to execute an assignment and assumption agreement for Brookstone Phase 8.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Mr. Fields.
This is consistent with past assignments that the city has done for the Brookstone build-out. This is Riverwood Holdings is the developer. They're assigning their rights and obligations of the development agreement to the development arm of Loose Homes, who constructs the houses on the lots. It's an assignment of 15 of the 18 lots. 3 of the lots, Riverwood Holdings will be retaining.
Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, on Resolution 24-45?
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, so I think now we're on to letter H, which is Ordinance 1265, the petition for annexation from Jacob, Arndt, and Gayal, Oglesbay. This is the third reading, so Misty, would you do the third reading for us, please?
City of Lake Mills Ordinance 1265, an ordinance annexing territory to the City of Lake Mills, Jefferson County, Wisconsin.
Thank you. So now we need a motion to adopt Ordinance 1265.
I'll move to approve Ordinance 1265, annexing territory to the City of Lake Mills.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fields, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. Is there any discussion, any information from staff? Okay, seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, on Ordinance 1265?
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next item, letter I, is Ordinance 1266, and this is the second reading. This is regarding our fence zoning ordinance. So Misty, would you conduct the second reading, please?
City of Lake Mills Ordinance 1266, amending Chapter 660 zoning regulations, Article 2 general regulations, Section 660-14 fences.
Thank you. So that completes the second reading of Ordinance 1266. So we would move that forward to a future agenda for the third reading. Next agenda item is Ordinance 1267 regarding swimming pool and spa requirements. This is also a second reading. So Misty, would you do that second reading for us?
City of Lake Mills Ordinance 1267, amending Chapter 279 building construction, Article 1 Uniform Building Code, Section 279-17 swimming pool spa requirements, Sub B general pool requirements, Sub 1 location and Sub 2 access.
Thank you. So that completes the second reading. So we would move Ordinance 1267 forward to a future meeting for the third reading. Our last agenda item under council business is discussion on canceling the city council meeting of July 2nd. So Drake, other than those last two zoning amendments that would have a third reading, are there any other items that would necessitate a July 2nd meeting?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Do council members have a preference, suggestion?
I would say we cancel that meeting and have our next meeting on the third Tuesday of July.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Guess that was a motion? Okay.
So we have a motion from Mr. Waters, second from Mr. Field to cancel the July 2nd meeting and move any pending items forward to the third Tuesday in July. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's a 5-0. Recommendations for future agenda besides what we've just identified. I guess we'll have the Sandy Beach. The next presentation will be on our third meeting, our third week in July.
Can we talk maybe a bit about the goal-setting session? Maybe is there dates that I mean, I don't want to outline everybody's schedule, but is there dates that maybe
Yeah, we're,
look at?
I'm waiting on a proposal from a facilitator, and they're gonna send some dates to me. I'm hoping to get them this week, which I can forward along, but we're targeting end of July, early August if we can't find a date that works. So,
Look at that, second week of July?
what was that?
Second week of July? Is that too soon?
I can raise it as an option to them.
So this would be an in-person dinner time meeting. I believe I'm actually out the second week in July, so I don't know if that would work. But I guess if you can, once you get something from the consultant, maybe then just throw out some dates to us and see if we can find something.
I guess my thought is sooner the better, because we do have a lot of agenda items and continues to come up in our meetings, so.
Yep, I went through a scope of work with them on yesterday.
Great.
And so they're putting together their proposal for me, and I am expecting something soon.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
I would like to have an update on how Bayberry is going.
The Cottage Inn, do we need a agenda item on a future meeting, or can you talk about that in the city manager?
Do you need one?
I was
Michelle's
just
asking for an
curious.
update.
Yeah.
The building permit's been issued. I won't have any other update for you beyond
Okay.
that.
Okay. Anything else?
Something, I have a question.
Yeah.
What is the next step on the urban forest management tree protection proposal? That was a proposal then for management to consider?
So it's at your level now, so it'll appear on a future agenda item
Okay.
for consideration to adopt. That's really where it stands. So the staff will draft a resolution in the affirmative for adoption of it, and then you'll be able to discuss it and determine whether you want to proceed with adoption, if there's changes you want in it, things of that nature. But that will likely be the meeting in July, the third Tuesday in July. We can have a resolution prepared for that and have you discuss it, but it's on your timeline now. So you can discuss and approve at any point in the future now that it's been presented to you.
Thank you. Good question. Okay, Not seeing any other ideas, so I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.